Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Tech Team Toronto channel where we're going to tinker and learn. Today, we're going to do the MS Access Basics tutorial. And with that, be sure to like the video on the way in, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share the video with a friend. All helps us out. Okay. So, be sure to subscribe, share, like on the way in. Thanks for supporting the channel. Linktree link will be in the information section of the video. We are Tech Team Tronics, and we'll begin the presentation. All right. So basically, the advantages of databases versus an Excel spreadsheet are this. If you have a lot of data, Excel is a great for a limited amount of data before performance issues arise. If you want to control the amount of data based upon the role in which one plays in the database, for instance, you don't want sales looking over at accounting data necessarily, then you would want to use like that for an extra level of security in terms of keeping people honest. And also, whoever the thing about Excel is, whoever opens the Excel sheet has access to all the data within the sheet. There's, I mean, then if you want an audit trail, you want to have visibility on who's accessing and making changes to the data. The database is the way to go. And then if you're dealing with local versus external data, you can use Access to connect data from a variety of external data sources so that you can view, query, and edit that data without having to import it. Pretty amazing stuff. Okay. So, in very general terms, the advantages here is that Access is the best choice when you have to track and record data regularly and then display and export and print subsets of that data. Access Forms provides a more convenient interface than Excel worksheet for working with your data. So now there are many alternatives to Microsoft Access on the market. You have Buddhabase, Open Office Space, Access Base, LibreOffice Base, SQLite, NeonDB, MongoDB, Google Sheets, Airtable, Smartsheet. They have their advantages and their disadvantages, but today we're going to be going over the basics of Access. So we're going to start it off with opening a blank database to have a look around and see what's going on. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to open up an Access database. And we're just going to start it off with a blank database. We'll create database. When you open a blank database, generally it opens it up with a table. And we'll cover tables more extensively later in this presentation. For now, one of the things I want to do is I want to look around and show you the basics of what we have here. You have the new blank database section where you could do something for inventory, asset tracking, project management, and all that other stuff. They have more templates available, which is wonderful. You can create new, blank, open an existing database. So these are some of the existing databases that I'll be opening probably throughout the course of this presentation. You can do info, and in the info section, this is where you could get the path of the document. You copy the local path, or you can open the file location. And you could compact or repair the database, or you can encrypt it with a password. This is where you could save it, but before we do that, we're going to go back to that, and then You could print whatever you want, or you can save as. And this is your save as screen. You can save it as a database, Access 2000 database, so on and so forth. So it has different types. You could do it as a template. And there are advanced features too. And you can just do the save as. You could print it, you could close it. And I'll skip over to and just go to options. And then we're going to take a look at the general options for working with Access. You can you have the user interface options, which enable live preview, which basically shows a preview of how a feature affects the document as you hover over the different choices. You have screen tip style. You can show feature descriptions in the screen tips if you want to. You have the option not to show feature and descriptions in the screen tips, or don't show screen tips. You can show the shortcut keys in the screen tips. You can disable hardware graphics acceleration. And you could modify how the databases are created. You could create databases for Access 2000, Access 2002, 2003, Access 2007, 2016, so on and so forth. I rarely ever mess with a lot of these settings, but they're nice to know about, and they're very handy. And you can lock up a database to the point where you can keep people honest. And this is the default folder. You could always change the default folder. Like oftentimes I work off my Google Drive, so I probably, would change that to that. Then you have the new database sort order, which you have general, and you have all the different formats for that. And then you have the basic personalization of my Microsoft Office. So then I'm going to go over to the current database and look at the options for the current database. You can change the title, make a title application. You can change the icon by which it looks, for which it opens. You could display whatever form you want. So typically you would have all the different forms listed there. And then you'd have the display status bar, which is that data sheet view thing that you see down there and all that. Then you have document window options, overlapping windows, tabbed windows. I prefer to work with tabbed windows in some cases. Overlapping windows come handy for other situations. It all depends on what your preference is. Display document tabs. You can display document tabs or not display document tabs. I usually leave that checked. I don't mess with that. Then you have the access special keys. And what that is you can show the navigation pane, show the immediate window, show VB window, show pause execution. We'll cover those keys later on in the presentation, so stay tuned for that. You could compact on close, which is real handy. You could remove personal information from the file properties on save, and you can use Windows theme controls on forms. You can enable layout view, enable design changes for tables and datasheet view, and you could check for truncated number fields. So there's all kinds of different options, and you have picture property storage format. You could preserve the source image format, which is a smaller file size, or you could convert all picture data to bitmaps compatible with earlier versions of Access 2003 and such. Now here you have the option to display the navigation pane or not to display the navigation pane. And when you do that, what happens is if I was to click OK, it would ask me to open or to close and reopen the database. And then you have the navigation options, which gets a little bit more complex. You can relate objects and group unrelated objects and that sort of thing. You can select the ribbon name if there was one available. And then you could do the shortcuts menu bar and allow full menus, allow default shortcut menus, and there's all kinds of nifty options for autocorrect, which you could track name and autocorrect info or perform name and autocorrect. You could log name and autocorrect changes, and Then we have the filter lookup options for a database, and you can show a list of values in the local index fields, local non-index fields, ODBC fields. Don't display lists when more than this number of records is read. Typically set to 1,000. You could change that. And caching web service and SharePoint tables. Use cache format is compatible with Microsoft Access 2010 and later. Clear cache on close, never cache. Those are your options there. And then you have data type support options. And you can support large number of big int data type for linked or imported data tables. You can support date and time for extended date and time to data tables. So those are some of the options. Now you have data sheet options, which you could customize the way in which data sheets look and access. You have the grid line and cell effects. You have horizontal, vertical grid lines showing. And then you have the default cell effects such as flat, raised, or sunken. Flat, raised, or sunken. And then you have the default column width, which is about an inch or so. That's what I have. You have default fonts, and you could change this to your desires. And then we get into the object design. So you could do like your table design. Default, you have the options for default field type to be short text, long text, number, date, time, currency, yes, no, hyperlink. You could change the default text sizes anywhere from 1 to 255 in this case for short text. And you could default number field size is integer, byte, long integer, single, double, decimal, replication ID, and that sort of thing. You could auto index on import or create with the ID, key code, number, and you can show property update options for buttons. You can show table names. Output all fields. You can enable auto join. You can query the design font. So there's all these different options for your query designs. You can use SQL server compatible syntax, AS, ANSI 92. This database. So these options are very extensive. You could explore what they do too, and I'd encourage you all to look through the menus and see what they do as well. You can select Beaver, partially enclosed, fully enclosed, perform report design view. You can use normal template, report templates, and that. And then you got error checking and form and report design view. Enable error checking, check for unassociated labels, control for new unassociated labels, check for keyboard shortcut errors, check for invalid control properties, check for common report errors, and they'll use this green here to indicate the indicator color. You have the different proofing options. You can set up the different autocorrect options on your database. You can specify how Access corrects the text that you type with autocorrect options, and it will click on that, and you could see this screen here and such. You can, when correcting spelling in Microsoft Office programs, you can ignore words in uppercase. You can ignore words that contain numbers. You can ignore internet and file addresses. You can flag repeated words. You can enforce accented uppercase in French. Suggest for main category dictionary only. Then you have the custom dictionaries, which you got roaming dictionary, custom dictionary, and default dictionaries, and that sort of thing. And you got French modes, new spellings, tutio forms for Spanish, and forms only, and dictionary language. None of these settings I rarely mess with these settings. And you have the offset language preferences, which provide location would be English, and then settings that change the client behavior. When we move, we can move after enter, don't move, next field, next record, behavior entering field, select entire field, go to start of field, go to end of field, um, arrow key behavior, next field, next character, continuous. And this gets pretty extensive. Um, there's so much to it. I won't go through all of that aspect of it, but I will go to, I mean, it's just extensive what you could do with these menus to customize how the client receives your database. Then we have the customize the ribbon section. So you can, whatever shows up here is what you can see. And this is where you would do it at. And then you have the quick access toolbar. You can work that from this menu. You have the add-ins, which are like, COM add-ins and such. And then you have security, trust and security center. So basically, you have your trust menus in this as well. So yeah, you can block. You can do this. This is a very powerful menu indeed. So let's get back to the presentation. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're having a look around, and there are some different things that I want to cover in the database. What I want to talk about right now is some of the keyboard shortcuts and access the frequently used shortcuts. This table itemizes the most frequently used shortcuts and access desktop databases. Now, if you want to select the active tab of the ribbon and activate key tips, you would use Alt or F10. To move to a different ribbon tab, use key tips or the arrow keys. You go to the home tab, you hit Alt H. If you want to go to the tell me box on the ribbon, Alt plus Q, enter the search term. If you want to display the shortcut menu for the selected item, you had to do like Shift F10 on the Windows menu key. And then if you want to move the focus to a different pane of the window, you would hit F6, function key F6. And then if you want to open an existing database, you would hit Control O or Control F12. If you want to show or hide the navigation pane, it could be like F11. If you want to show or hide the property sheet, F4. If you want to switch between edit mode or insertion point display navigation mode in the datasheet design view, F2. If you want to switch form view and if you want to switch to the form view from the form and the design view, you'd hit F5. Move to the next previous field in the datasheet view, tab key or shift tab. Go to a specific record in datasheet view, Alt F5, and then in the record number box, type in the record number and press enter. And then if you want to open a print dialog box for data sheets and forms and reports, Control P. Open a page setup dialog box for forms and reports, S. Open Find tab and a Find and Replace dialog box in the datasheet view form view, Control F. Open Help window, F1. And you can access by going to Alt F4. All right, so moving right along. All right, so essentially we have tables, fields, and records. According to Microsoft, in a database, tables are made up of records, and records are made up of fields. Fields are the individual pieces of data in a record. Each field corresponds to a column in a table. Fields can contain different types of data, such as numbers, text, hyperlinks, and dates. Each record contains specific data, such as information about a product or employee. So some of that we could see in some of these databases here. So let me get back in my screen here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open a database from what I work with. And I'll open up my projects. This is a projects table. I have my primary key is being ID. And then I talk about what my different projects are, who's the owner, the category, the priority, the status, this, and the other. So this is like kind of a general idea of what a table would look like in data and Access. Then I have a subtable that deals with different parts of the projects that I deal with, and this is kind of a general idea of how like um, a table is constructed. So now now the importance of a primary key, which I touched about before, in Access, it uses a primary key field to quickly associate data from multiple tables and combine that data in a meaningful way. You can include the primary key fields in other tables to refer back to the table that is the source of the primary key. In those other tables, the fields are called foreign keys. So the ID key that I had going for me and the demonstration was my primary key. Let me talk about when to use a form. Ideally, in situations where data needs to be manually keyed into the database, it's ideal for form usage. That's what I say. According to Microsoft and Microsoft Access, forms are used to create the user interface for data entry and management. Forms can help make it easier to view or get items and to manipulate how data is presented to the user. For instance, for example, a form can display a stock item with all its orders in one window. Forms can also be used to control access to data, as such as which fields of data are displayed. So let me get us back to our screen here, and we'll talk about some of the forms. Let's see. So one of the great forms that comes with, like, say, some of the example project databases that they provide you is this form. I think it's a pretty good design. You could always go into design view and you could do such, and you could like modify the design to your liking and such. But we'll go back to form view. And what I like about forms is that it allows you a nice way to interface with the database. Like, it could be as simple as creating, say, like a dashboard to get into the database. Like, this is very handy and very quick. Like, you could use it to open files, open other databases, and you could open folders and open reports and that sort of thing. But back to the form. But that's the power and the beauty of a form. You could attach photos and different things like that. And you could make notes on your different projects, and you have the sub forms where I could create other additional notes and information about the projects that I'm working on. I use the project database myself to help me move forward on my projects and keep track of all the different projects that I have going on. Um, at any time, if the database isn't locked down, you can design it. You can move fields here. You can add fields, delete fields, and all that good stuff. And there are so many different forms that you could work with. Um, so let me get back to the presentation. All right, so what we got here, so that's when you would use a form, essentially. And now what we're going to talk about is the power of the query. All right, when you use a query, using a query makes it easier to view, add, delete, or change data in your Access database. Some other reasons for using queries: you can find specific data quickly by filtering, find specific quickly data by filtering for specific criteria, and you can calculate or summarize the data. A query could give you an answer to a simple question, perform calculations, or combine data from different tables, and add or change to delete data from a database. So with that, I'm going to prepare to go into a different database. Let's see here. So an example of a query, it's not the most advanced query that I could come up with, but what I needed was a report that in this database that tells me what groceries I need to go get. And it's based upon this. It's simply this. When I go into inventory, I put my priority to high. And then in order to facilitate this, let's see here. I have a query here, and I'll click on the query, and it pulls some information from that form, and it's triggered by high query. I did this high query because I didn't want to filter that report. I didn't want to modify my table data. And at any time, this data, would give me a query as to what I would need in order to go to the grocery store. So I'm looking for some celery, some tropical twist, some imitation crab, and that sort of thing. So that's the power of a query, you know. Now, a report a report is a database object that comes in handy when you want to present information in your database for any of the following uses: display or distribute a summary of data, archive a snapshot of the data, provide details about the individual records. So some of that is we can use a report for. So I could demonstrate a report. So I have a report here called High Query, which is based upon this query that I use. And the cool thing about it is it just basically lists all the items that was done in that query, and you could, you know, you could design view it, and you can edit the report and different things. You can move different things around, and this is what the design view looks like. And while we're here, we may as well go ahead and like look at the different menus and what they do. Like we initially did the file menu. Now we can look at the home menu. It allows us the different views for the whatever we're working with, whether it be a form or a table or a query. You get the different views. Then you got like create section, which is the application parts. By the way, real quick, that is the save button. And then we have the application parts. You have the table design features. You have the query design features. You have the form design features. And then you have the reports. And you have reports wizards. The wizards are cool. They help you generate a report, but like I like to customize reports. So they give you a good starting point in order to get to the point where you could customize the reports. Then you have the macro section, and this is where you could create a macro and it has all the different features, like if I print preview, and you could do a print preview command, or you could get rid of it, or I could say I could do a auto contact form outlook. I mean, there's just so many different things that you could do with these different forms. I'm going to close out of that. I don't want to save it. Um, but yeah, these are the different menus. Then you could work with external data. You could get a new data source from a file, whether it be Excel, or you could get an HTML document, XML file, or text file. get it from a database, whether it's Access SQL server, from Azure database or DBase file. You get it from services, SharePoint list, data services, or from other sources such as ODBC database or Outlook folder. And then you have the saved exports. You could do export of data to Excel, text file, or XPS, export it as Access, or send it as an email, and that sort of thing. And then we have the database tools, which allow you to compact and repair database. You could run Visual Basic, run Visual Basic commands, run a macro. You could work on your relationships and object dependencies. So I could show you an example of how I relate contacts, but I kind of have it loosely related. As you can see, I have the grocery categories, stores, and settings. And then you have the database documenter, analyze performance, analyze table, access database, SharePoint, add-ins, and that's such a thing. Then you have the help menu, which is great. And let me get back to the presentation. And that's the beauty of when to use a report. Then we talk about relationships. I mentioned briefly about relationships and how I use relationships to relate different parts of the Access database together. When you have two tables, like say products and orders, you know what I mean? You want to like keep the products in one place, but you want to use key points of that data multiple times in your orders database. So like a good example of such, let's see, we could like let's see here. So and I'll go back to my groceries, my brand table, and we could talk about, let's see, design view. Show you what design view looks like. And this is the basic like of the table design view. You have the general property sheet and that sort of thing, and then you have the hide query and all that. Oh, let me go back to data sheet view, and then we can view database tools, relationships, and this is the relationship section. So if I want to relate, like how I have this working is I want to relate the stores, and I want to relate the categories and kind of tie those tables together so that I have the option to select from a drop down which pulls from that select table. That table that we're talking about is grocery categories. A real simple table with information like laid out as such. So let me get us back to the presentation here. So that's basically the gist of a relationship and when you want to use a relationship. Now, you can import objects into the current Access database. Access provides a number of ways to copy an object, such as a table, form, from one database to another. Copying and pasting an object is easiest, but importing an object from a different Access database in your current database offers you more options. There was some of those menu options that we talked about that showed that feature where you could get imported data from everything from text files to spreadsheets. But that's pretty much it in this basic tutorial. I want to thank you for supporting the channel. You can visit the link in Linktree. The database we were looking at is from the Grocery Dynamite Basic Database Access 2016 database system. And you could get a copy of it at grocerydynamite.com. It requires Office 2016 Professional Plus or later. You can email me info@grocerydynamite.com. And thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe, share the video, and like the video on your way out. And thank you and have a nice day.